My son asked my husband why he never says, "I love you" back, and my husband looked him dead in the eye and said, "Men don't do that." The next night, during dinner, my 9-year-old stood up and asked me, "Mom, should I read the text Dad sent his coworker last night?" My husband dropped his fork. That was the moment everything shattered. You think you know someone. You marry them, build a life, raise a child together. You make sacrifices. You accept their flaws. You even start to tell yourself that maybe you're just expecting too much when they stop holding your hand or looking you in the eyes. But nothing prepares you for the moment your child becomes the one to see through the lies you've spent years justifying. My name is Jasmine. I'm 34 years old. I live just outside of Aurora, Illinois, in a neighborhood where everyone pretends to have it all together. Front lawns trimmed, barbecues on Sundays, smiles in grocery aisles that don't reach the eyes. My husband, Colin, is the kind of man people like. He's charming in public, puts on a good face. He shakes hands firmly, holds doors open, and never forgets to send his mom flowers on her birthday. But at home, he's distant. Not cruel, not loud, just absent. The kind of absent you feel even when he's sitting right next to you on the couch. Then there's Eli, my son. He's 9. And somehow, in just 9 years, he's become the most emotionally intelligent person in our house. Sensitive, curious, kind. He says, "I love you" the way some people breathe, naturally, often, and without fear. He says it to me every night before bed. And to Colin, too. Colin never says it back. He usually gives Eli a pat on the head, sometimes a distracted, "You too," without even looking up from his phone. I noticed it. Of course I did, but I told myself, that's just how he is. Some men struggle with affection. I excused it, for years, until Eli asked the question that made my heart stop beating for a full second. We were in the kitchen, just me and him, folding laundry together, because that's how we bond. He handed me a tiny pair of socks and said so casually, "Mom, why doesn't Dad ever say he loves me back?" I dropped the socks. I think I smiled at first, trying to cover the panic flooding my chest. I said something stupid like, "Oh, honey, you know Daddy loves you. Some people just show it differently." But Eli just blinked at me. He told someone else he loved her, on his phone, last night. I felt the room spin, and just like that, the thread I had been clinging to, the belief that our family was just going through a hard season, snapped clean in two. He wasn't just emotionally distant, he was emotionally available to someone else. That night, I lay in bed next to Colin, staring at the ceiling, listening to him scroll through his phone. I didn't ask him about it. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger wearing the face of someone I used to love, and I thought about Eli. My sweet, brave boy, noticing what I had ignored, feeling what I had numbed myself to. That's when I decided I wouldn't be the quiet wife anymore. I wouldn't let my son grow up thinking love was supposed to feel one-sided. I wouldn't let him think men don't say, "I love you," because real men do. Real men look their sons in the eyes and say it like they mean it. The next night, I invited Colin's mom, Donna, over for dinner, just to keep things civil. I had no idea Eli was going to stand up and say what he said. I didn't plan that part. But in a way, I think he did. Because the truth has a way of demanding its moment, no matter how hard we try to keep the surface calm. And when Eli stood there, holding the little notebook where he had written down the messages he'd seen, Colin dropped his fork, and our life changed forever. You don't realize how silence becomes normal until it's the only thing you hear. Most mornings in our house start the same way. I wake up first. I brush my teeth, feed the cat, and start a pot of coffee. 2 sugars, splash of oat milk, just how Colin likes it. I do it without thinking now. Muscle memory. Habit. He comes downstairs dressed for work, already checking his phone. He'll grab the mug without making eye contact, give me a quiet, distracted thanks, and sit at the table scrolling emails like I'm not even there. We haven't kissed good morning in over a year. We haven't really touched, outside of bumping into each other in the hallway, since last spring. Sometimes I look at him and try to remember what it felt like to be loved by him. Not just chosen, not just tolerated. Loved, desired, held. I think we all tell ourselves stories about our lives to make the pain easier to carry. Mine was, he's just tired. He works hard. He's not good at affection, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care. But deep down, I knew I was shrinking. I'm not a dramatic person. I don't scream. I don't threaten to leave or toss plates across the room. I do what most women do when we're slowly breaking. We make ourselves smaller, softer, quieter. I tried not to need much. I didn't want to add more pressure to his stress. I told myself a good wife makes life easier, not harder. But while I was busy making excuses, Eli was watching. And kids don't just watch what we say, they absorb everything we feel. Eli's always been sensitive. He asks big questions, even when they scare me. Like the time he asked why Grandma cried when Grandpa died if he was always mean to her. He notices when I fake a smile. He's the kind of kid who puts his hand on your arm when you're upset and says, "You don't have to talk, I'll just sit with you." When I had the flu last winter and was curled up on the couch, Colin brought me some soup, only because Eli insisted. He handed it to me and walked away, but Eli sat with me for an hour holding my hand. He was 8. Some days I feel like I'm raising my son and my husband. Colin is a successful project manager at a tech company. He's the guy people invite to golf outings and neighborhood fantasy leagues. He remembers everyone's birthday but mine. He's never mean, not in the ways people notice. He doesn't yell or cheat at poker or drink too much, but he withholds. His affection, his attention, his presence, all locked up behind a wall I haven't been able to climb in years. I used to ask him about it in the beginning, when we were first married and I'd reach for his hand and he'd pull away, or when he'd fall asleep while I was still mid-sentence. I'd say, "Do you still love me?" And he'd chuckle like I was being needy. So I stopped asking. I started pouring all that love into Eli, and I think Colin liked it that way. As long as I wasn't nagging or demanding or emotional, we got along just fine. He called it peace. I called it pretending. But Eli felt it. He started crawling into my bed more often at night, started asking questions like, "Were you sad today?" And "Do you wish you lived somewhere else?" I always told him no, that I was happy, that everything was fine. But I think children can tell when a mother is lying to herself. One night, Eli and I were watching a movie, just the two of us on the couch under a blanket, popcorn between us. Colin was upstairs in his office. His office door is always closed, even when he's just scrolling social media. Eli looked up at me and asked, "Do all dads love moms like that, without saying it?" And I didn't know how to answer. I said, "Love can look different for different people." He nodded, but I could see it in his eyes. He didn't buy it. That was the week everything started unraveling, not in a big dramatic way, not all at once, but thread by thread. And I was beginning to realize maybe Eli wasn't the only one who deserved better. It started with a single question, one sentence from a child that knocked the air out of me. Eli was sitting on the edge of his bed, legs dangling off the side, Batman pajamas a size too short. I was tucking him in, smoothing the blanket over his legs when he looked up at me and asked, "Why doesn't Dad say, 'I love you,' back when I say it?" That moment is seared into my mind like a photograph. His wide eyes, the soft nightlight glowing behind him, the way he blinked slowly like he was already bracing for the lie I might give him. I hesitated. I actually heard myself stall. He loves you, baby. Some people just show it differently. But Eli shook his head. "Number, that's not it." He said it quietly, but there was certainty in his voice. He wasn't guessing. He knew, and that's when he told me. I saw the texts. On his phone. When he was in the shower, my mouth went dry. I sat down on the edge of his bed and asked as calmly as I could, "What texts?" Eli leaned over and pulled something out from under his pillow, a little yellow notepad from his school desk. On the top page, written in big blocky letters, were sentences that made my stomach clench. "I've been thinking about you all day. Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again." He looked up at me and said, "Her name is Vanessa." He sent her hearts, a bunch of them. For a second, I didn't breathe. I wanted to tell him he misunderstood, that maybe it was a joke or a work thing or anything else, but I didn't, because I knew. I had known something was wrong for a long time. I just didn't want to name it. But now, my son had. And I couldn't unhear it. I took the notepad from him and said gently, How did you? He shrugged. Dad's phone lit up. He left it in the bathroom. I wasn't snooping. It just popped up. Then he looked at me, really looked, and asked something no 9-year-old should ever have to ask. Mom, does this mean Dad loves her more than us? I felt my heart break right there on his bed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to protect him from all of it. But more than anything, I wanted to tell the truth. So I told him something simple, something I could stand behind even in my own hurt. Number. If someone loves you, they act like it. What you saw? That wasn't love. That was dishonesty. He nodded like he understood something deeper than most adults I know. Then he said something that changed everything. So are we going to tell him we know? I didn't answer right away, because honestly, I didn't know. What do you do when the person you trusted to protect your family becomes the one hurting it from the inside? I wanted to confront Colin, scream, ask him why. I wanted him to feel humiliated. But more than that, I wanted Eli to feel seen. I wanted him to know that telling the truth matters, that protecting your heart isn't something you should apologize for. So I took a breath, kissed Eli on the forehead, and said, "We'll figure it out together, I promise." That night, while Colin was in the shower, I sat in the hallway outside the bathroom door, not saying a word, just listening to the sound of the water running, thinking about how many lies could live between two people without a single raised voice. The next morning, I didn't say anything. I packed Eli's lunch, brushed his hair, and dropped him off at school. But inside, something was growing, a fire I hadn't felt in years. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, truth, a line in the sand. So I made a quiet decision. I invited Colin's mother, Donna, over for dinner that weekend. Colin always tried harder to perform when she was around, acted more affectionate, more polite, more husband-like. I wanted him to be comfortable, because comfort makes people sloppy. And I told Eli gently, if you ever feel like it's time to say something, you can. I'll be right there. And no matter what happens, you did nothing wrong. He nodded and tucked that notepad into his backpack. We didn't know exactly what we were going to do, but we both knew this. We weren't going to stay quiet anymore. I've always believed that moments of truth don't come with flashing lights. They come quietly, wrapped in routines, hiding in silence. That Saturday, the house felt too clean, too quiet. I had scrubbed every counter, fluffed every pillow, wiped down the already spotless silverware. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was trying to stay calm. Colin was in a good mood. He was actually humming to himself in the kitchen, tossing a salad like he hadn't emotionally abandoned us. Like the messages Eli found didn't exist. He had no idea what was coming. I'd invited his mother, Donna, for dinner. I didn't tell her why, just said I wanted to have a nice family evening. She happily accepted. She loves anything that lets her pretend we're a perfect unit. She's the kind of woman who uses phrases like, boys will be boys, and that's just how men are. It's exhausting. But I knew she'd be the perfect audience. Colin was always more careful around her. He'd say things like, "How was your day, Jazz?" in front of her, things I hadn't heard in months. He'd even reach for my hand under the table, not out of affection, but performance. Eli had been quiet all day. I asked him in the morning if he still wanted to say something. He nodded once and said, "Yeah." I think he should hear it from me. I looked him in the eyes. "You don't have to protect me, baby. You're allowed to just be a kid." And he said, "I know. But this time, I want to protect you." I turned away quickly so he wouldn't see me cry. As dinner approached, my heart felt like it was ticking, not beating, ticking, like a clock winding down to something irreversible. I set the table carefully. 4 plates, napkins folded, real glasses, not the mismatched ones we used during the week. I even lit a candle. Colin didn't seem to notice anything unusual. He complimented the roast chicken I made. He never compliments anything, and poured wine for his mother like he was in a commercial. Donna smiled across the table and said, "This is nice, Jasmine. It's good to have everyone together." I nodded. I smiled. I pretended everything was fine. Eli pushed his peas around on his plate, quiet but alert. I knew that look. He was scanning the room like he was watching a movie unfold. I reached under the table and gave his knee a little squeeze. "You're safe. I'm here." Halfway through dinner, while Donna was rambling about her gardenias, Colin leaned back and said, "See, Jazz? I told you we needed more nights like this. Just the family." And Eli looked up. It was like a switch flipped. He put down his fork slowly, sat up straighter, then calmly, too calmly, he said, "Mom, should I read the texts Dad sent his coworker last night?" The entire table froze. Colin blinked. His fork slipped from his hand and clattered against his plate. Donna looked from Eli to Colin, utterly confused. "What?" Colin said, half laughing. "What's he talking about?" Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out the little yellow notepad. He laid it on the table like it was a legal document. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to taste those lips again." He read it clearly. No shaking, no fear. "I've been thinking about you all day. Miss your body." Colin stood up. "Okay, that's enough." Eli didn't flinch. "No, it's not. You tell me, men don't say I love you. But you said it to Vanessa, with hearts." The silence was suffocating. Donna's hand flew to her mouth. "Colin!" Colin looked at me like I had betrayed him, but I never said a word. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Eli reached for my hand. I held it tightly. That night didn't break us. It revealed us, and the man who stood in that dining room, stuttering and furious and exposed, that wasn't a husband. That was a stranger, and I was done protecting him. For a few long, echoing seconds after Eli finished reading, the only sound in the dining room was the ticking of the wall clock and the slow, uneven rhythm of Colin's breathing. He stood there, red-faced, stunned into silence. Not because he was sorry, because he'd been caught. Donna was the first to speak, and even she didn't know what to say. "Colin, is this some kind of joke?" Colin didn't answer her. He looked straight at me, his wife of 10 years, and said, "What the hell are you doing, Jasmine? You're dragging our son into this?" It was the first time he'd looked at me directly in weeks, but there was no warmth behind his eyes, just rage and embarrassment. I stood up slowly and placed my napkin on the table. My hands were steady. My voice was quiet but firm. "No, Colin. I didn't drag anyone into anything. Eli came to me with the truth, something you've been hiding for God knows how long." He ran a hand through his hair and let out a bitter laugh. "You're seriously going to take a kid's word over mine? You really think I'd cheat on you?" Before I could respond, Eli spoke again, calm, devastatingly calm. "You left your phone unlocked, Dad. I saw the messages. I wrote them down. You told her you loved her. You said you missed her lips. You never say that to Mom or to me." Colin's face went pale. For the first time since I'd known him, he had no script, no charm, no cover story. He looked at Donna as if begging her to say something that would undo the moment, but she just sat there, staring at him, like she didn't recognize her own son. I turned to her, finally breaking the silence between us. "Now you know why your son never says, 'I love you.' Not because he's just a man, because he only gives that part of himself to someone he thinks he won't have to answer to." Donna swallowed hard and looked down. She didn't defend him. She didn't try to spin it. She just looked tired. Colin grabbed his keys. "I'm not staying here for this circus. You're both out of your minds." I stepped between him and the front door, not to stop him, but to make it clear. I wasn't scared of him anymore. "Before you walk out, just know this. Our son saw you. He sees you. And one day, when he's a man, he'll remember how you showed up in his life, or how you didn't." Colin looked at Eli, but Eli wouldn't meet his gaze. That was the real heartbreak. It wasn't the texts. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was watching a father realize his son no longer looked up to him. He left. No goodbyes, no apologies. Just slammed the door and peeled out of the driveway like a coward trying to outrun consequences. Eli didn't cry. He just leaned into me, quietly. I wrapped my arms around him and kissed the top of his head. Donna stayed seated. She didn't say much for a while. Finally, she looked at me and said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know. And for the first time in years, I believed her. Maybe she had spent so long believing in the image of her son that she couldn't see the reality until now. I stood there holding Eli, surrounded by the scent of roast chicken and spilled wine, and thought about all the women who stay quiet, who carry the weight of someone else's emotional cowardice just to keep the family together. But that night proved something I needed to learn the hard way. Silence doesn't protect a family. Truth does. My 9-year-old son stood up for love, for honesty, for me, and I will never forget the sound of his voice at that dinner table. It didn't just expose Colin, it freed us. The morning after the dinner, the house was quiet, but not the heavy, painful silence it used to be. This time, it felt like space had been cleared, like something toxic had been scraped out of the walls. Colin didn't come home that night. He didn't text. He didn't call. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wait up. I didn't sit on the couch checking the clock or wondering if I was doing something wrong. I slept, truly slept for the first time in months. Eli crawled into my bed around 6 in the morning. He wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "Are we going to be okay now?" And I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, baby. We are. We really are." That was the beginning of a new chapter. One I didn't plan for, but one I now know we both desperately needed. I filed for a legal separation 2 weeks later. I didn't make a big speech. I didn't send a dramatic text. I simply met with a lawyer, had the paperwork drawn up, and served it quietly. Colin didn't fight it. He moved out like he was relieved he wouldn't have to pretend anymore. He told friends it was mutual. But anyone who really knew me could see it wasn't, and that was okay. Because I stopped caring about keeping up appearances. I started caring about healing. I got Eli into therapy first. I found a great child psychologist who let him open up in his own time. I told her everything about the texts, about Colin's emotional distance, about the dinner. She told me something that stuck with me. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need honest ones, safe ones. And that night at dinner, you gave him that. It still brings tears to my eyes. I started therapy too. I began to unpack the years I spent shrinking to fit inside someone else's idea of a low-maintenance wife. I stopped apologizing for wanting affection, for asking to be seen, for needing softness in return. You don't realize how lonely you've been until someone finally asks, "How are you really?" And you don't know how to answer without crying. But slowly, I found my voice again. The one I had before marriage, before motherhood, the one that used to speak up without fear of being called too much. Colin still sees Eli every other weekend. Their relationship is polite, distant. And sometimes Eli still asks hard questions. Does Dad love us again yet? And I always tell him the truth. He loves you in the way he knows how, but that doesn't mean the way he shows love is the right way. You get to choose how you give and receive love and what you accept. Because if there's one thing I've learned through this, it's this. Love is not a guessing game. It is not something you have to earn or pull out of someone in crumbs. Love, real love, is active. It's consistent. It's spoken out loud and shown in actions, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. So many women live in emotional deserts convincing themselves they're just being too sensitive or ungrateful because no one's yelling, no one's hitting. But emotional neglect is abuse in disguise. It's death by silence. And our kids, they see it, they feel it. No matter how many birthday cakes you bake or smiles you fake, they know. I used to think I was staying for Eli, that breaking up the family would damage him. But I see now I wasn't protecting him. I was teaching him that love meant being ignored, overlooked, and shut out. And that's not the lesson he'll carry with him anymore. Now, when Eli says, "I love you," I stop what I'm doing, look him in the eye, and say it back with my whole heart, because I want him to grow up knowing that love isn't silent, that his voice matters, that truth, no matter how messy or painful, is the foundation of real connection. The night of that dinner didn't just expose a lie, it lit the way forward. And in that fire, we didn't fall apart. We found each other. Thank you for sitting with my story. Not just the pain, but the truth inside it. This wasn't easy to share, but if even one person out there feels less alone because of it, then it was worth it. If you've ever felt unseen, unloved, or silenced in your own home, please know you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Your feelings are valid, and you deserve more than quiet suffering. I'm still healing. Eli is too, but we're doing it together, and that makes all the difference. If this story moved you or made you think of someone who needs to hear it, please like the video, share it with a friend, and drop a comment below, even just a heart emoji to let me know you're out there. And if you want to hear more real stories like this one, stories about motherhood, relationships, and finding your voice, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. Your support helps more than you know. Take care of your heart and take care of each other.